It is Ryan Kevin Uncensored, and we have one of our favorite docs on. She's the vice president of medical affairs for Hello Heart, Dr. Jayne Morgan. And I always, hit up, you know, Dr. Morgan whenever I see something in the news as we go into the holidays. It always seems like there's something going on that we're not trying to get people to be panicked about, but just be aware about. How you doing today, Dr. Morgan?
How are you, Ryan? Always glad to be here.
So let's get right into it. People are getting home and they're coming home from colleges and universities, and aunties and uncles are all going to be gathered around the table for the Christmas holidays. There's this thing where they're talking about it's a possibility of four different things happening at once. Can you describe what we are talking about as far as, like, people having some conditions where they're all, gathered around the table and can walk away with something, virality?
You can walk away. So they call it the quad virus, quad meaning four, as opposed to, previous seasons we've had the tri. Now we've had the quad. So what was the tri? The tri was COVID, flu, RSV, respiratory syncytial virus. This year we're adding a fourth one, the norovirus. It's not a new virus, it's an old virus, but it's having a little bit of a resurgence this year. And so now we have all four viruses circulating during this winter season. All of our, holidays generally occur here in the winter. Now we start moving around. We're all gathered at the tables. Vaccination rates are low. And so that's why we're talking about what's going to happen with this quad virus that we have circulating this year.
So we're talking to Dr. Jayne Morgan about the quad virus. You talked about it, you touched on it. Why are vaccination rates low, not only for the COVID boosters, but also for the flu vaccine?
Yeah, we've seen a slight uptick from last year where they really reached their nadir last year, and they've come up a bit. But there are a number of reasons. One, just fatigue with the pandemic and isolation, but also politics are driving it, anti-vax movements, and let's be clear. A lot of these anti-vax movements are cloaked as vaccine safety movement. That's the cloak for anti-vaccine. And so if you are listening to people who are proponents of vaccine safety, that's actually what you're doing. You're listening to anti-vax. And it has slowly started to erode some of the confidence in America in vaccines. But also, what does it do? It creates confusion. And then when people don't know what to do, they just don't do anything. And then it also drives fear. And when people are afraid of something, they back away from it, or they continue to follow more of that information that's feeding that fear.
So I'm going to ask you about a couple of different things here because they're all over the news. And I know I'm not going to blindside you. I want to prepare you. I'm about to ask you about United Healthcare and the CEO and the backlash against people who have either co-pays or they've been denied claims and all of those things. When you talk about the healthcare profession and people being a little wary and thinking that, this is all a money grab, what do you say to people who think that? To not saying they're like anti-vaxxers, but they're like, I don't know why you keep asking me to take test after test after test after test. And the next thing you know, my bill is $10,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Let's be clear about it. Our healthcare system not only is imperfect, in many ways, it is broken. And I publicly speak about that all the time, especially when it comes to women and minorities, not only accessing it, but once we access it, if we can access it, then navigating it and dealing with all of the implicit bias within the system. And then, just as you pointed out, managing all of the complexities of a medical system that really is just a patchwork of things over the decades. We have put patches in. And I think our insurance companies are a great example of that patchwork. HMOs came in, patchwork, buying up doctors' offices. And so we've got this whole amalgam of a system that's really, a huge system to navigate. And hard to navigate. Even for me as a physician, becoming a patient in the system becomes difficult to navigate. And so, this needs to be something that can be overhauled and someone can take a look at it, but certainly somebody with a science background, somebody who's qualified, someone with medical credentials who's not just stoking fear or has thoughts about things or concerns or worries or biases, but actually has facts and data and science and understands what the scientific process is and what medicines are. And let's be clear, vaccines have saved millions and millions and millions of lives.
We're talking to Dr. Jayne Morgan here, Vice President of Medical Affairs for Hello Heart. When you see some of these appointments and people don't have the background and they haven't done the research and they're kind of just going off the cusp, I think somebody said that they wanted to uh, not give out pasteurized milk anymore. They wanted to do things like that. And when you see those kind of things, and you know that these people have positions of power, maybe not to just overnight do these things, but the influence that they have, what does it say to those in the medical profession?
And so I think, one of the things that it says to me when we talk about that, I think about DEI. And these are the same people who want to do away with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to be clear, DEI is not about hiring unqualified people. It is about hiring people who are qualified, who ordinarily would not be considered. And I think this is a great example. You see appointments of people who are not really qualified, but they're getting those appointments because of proximity and money. And I am certain that there are other people of color and other people and women who are credentialed and actually qualified for those jobs. That's the point of D&I, to make you look at people who have done the work, who have done the sacrifice, who have put forth the public service and have not just paid their way or had a way paved for them. That's the point of DE&I, to hire qualified people who otherwise would never be considered in this system.
One final question, and before you answer, I just want you to tell people how they can follow all of your social stuff and see all of your tips because they're very helpful. But my last question is, as we go into these holidays, what are the tips for people to be kind of like mindful of when they're gathered around these tables? Because a lot of these symptoms seem to mimic other symptoms.
That's right. Let's get back to all these viruses. So, of the four, remember RSV, COVID, flu, and norovirus. The norovirus is the only one that is not spread via the air. This is called the fecal oral route. In other words, your feces is contaminated. Your hands might be a little dirty. You might touch the light switch on your way out of the bathroom. The next person touches it, and then they're cooking food, or you're changing a diaper on a baby, and your hands are not completely clean. Also, that the norovirus is not completely, you don't completely rid yourself of it with hand sanitizer. So you must use soap and water. So the norovirus is different, and you become violently ill. We call it the vomiting disease. So you have 3 days of violent vomiting and diarrhea. One of your biggest risks is dehydration. You must stay hydrated. That does not mean sodas and coffee and alcohol. That means water and Pedialyte. So you get really vomiting that can be projectile vomiting. And in that way, if you're around someone with that type of vomiting, you can catch it in the air because it's coming out in the vomit. But generally, it's a fecal oral route. So of those three, that is the one that will give you 3 to 4 days of really violent. It will knock you down. You will not be on a plane. You won't be anywhere traveling. So
Wow.
the other three are the respiratory viruses with which we are familiar.
Hold on, Dr. Morgan. So you're saying, for people who are listening right now, that if they get the norovirus, they
Right.
cannot do Heineken and Hennessy.
Right. Exactly. That's not your hydration.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Just making sure because
Yep.
Q, that's all she like to do. She just shots and beer, shots and beer.
Yeah. Well, let's be clear. Alcohol will dehydrate you. Coffee will dehydrate you. So we're talking about water, but also things, sometimes people think of Gatorade. It's okay, but think about things more like Pedialyte that really will also replace some of those nutrients that you won't be able to take in
Right.
because you're vomiting. So you
Okay.
also remember, while you're vomiting and having this diarrhea, you're not able to eat. You're not able to take in nutrients. So as you are hydrating yourself, hydrate with something that can also give you some nutrients.
So it's just as simple as the light switch. You go in, you have you're taking a little boo-boo.
Hmm.
you try to get to the table. You
Right.
don't wash your hands.
Or you
And
don't wash them well enough.
okay, so washing your
Or you
hands.
use hand sanitizer instead of soap and water. So,
So it
and
doesn't
it, and
you
listen,
know, say
it
your
takes such a
ABC.
small amount to make you sick. An amount that's even less than a microscopic amount can make you violently ill. So it's not washing your hands, just didn't wash them thoroughly. Or you washed your hands thoroughly and you dried them on the towel where the person ahead of you didn't wash their hands. You know, so
Oh,
you use the same towel, the hand towel that's hanging there. So it spreads the smallest amount. I'm talking about an infinitesimal amount, and then everyone can be violently ill.
so basically, if I go in and somebody boo boo, I need to take a shower first.
You need to wash your hands, and it's really best to use your own towel or paper towel that no one else has used
Wow.
if you are at someone's house or you're in a public facility. So that nice towel that's hanging there, their fancy guest towels, is really only good if you're the first one to use it. Don't be
Wow.
the second or the third one. Then you need to dry your hands on something else.
That's a great tip. Okay, tell people how they can watch all of your stuff.
Yeah, follow me on Instagram at Dr. Jayne Morgan, DrJaynemorgan. I'm also on LinkedIn, Dr. Jayne Morgan. You can find me there. And I'm on the other channels as well. I spend most of my time on Instagram and LinkedIn, but you can find me on TikTok and Threads and X as well. So I always talk science, always talk medicine. Sometimes I mix in a little bit of family, but not really. So follow me for science and medicine. I do Stairwell Chronicles on Wednesday, where I sit on my stairs and I talk to you for 60 seconds or less, just about a little medical tip to help you live a healthier, better life.
There you go. Dr. Morgan, we appreciate the time.
All
As
right.
always great insight. And you got everybody in here saying, how many times have we touched the light switch?
That's right.
Good God.
The light switch. Get that Lysol wipe, clean the light switch.